and welcome to the On the Whistle podcast. It is my pleasure to host it today. Ali Howorth is my name. Football and African football is the game. Espérance Tunis beat LAFC 1-0 in the group stage of the Club World Cup, and it's put Espérance in a position where they're going into their final game knowing that if they beat Chelsea, big if, they will be going through to the knockout stage. It's the second win for an African team, only the second goal scored for an African team. But let's get into it. I'm beginning to feel like I'm a bad luck charm. Of the 6 games that African teams have played at this tournament, I have been at 4 of them. I have witnessed 3 losses and a draw, and the draw was a 0-0. I've seen 0 goals from an African team, and generally kind of not the most awe-inspiring football. However, the 2 games that I haven't seen, Mamelodi Sundowns against Ulsan in Orlando and Espérance versus LAFC in Nashville, have both been 1-0 wins to the African team. So I feel like maybe I shouldn't go to the Wydad game in a couple of days, and I shouldn't attend the last games of El Ahly, Espérance and Wydad, maybe just to help them out. But anyway, Espérance 1, LAFC 0. An incredible game. Not high on quality, not high on kind of energy because it was quite a slow-paced game, but high on kind of moments, high on drama, and high on nerves for those of us watching who have a vested interest in it. Espérance and LAFC both came into this game knowing that they needed really to get a positive result. For Espérance, technically, actually, kind of a draw would be all right. Because they know even if they'd beaten LAFC 2-0, they still would need to beat Chelsea in the final game. So for them, it was more about getting a draw at the very least, trying to get the win. LAFC knew they needed to win. If they didn't win, they would be knocked out of the Club World Cup. So, and both teams approached it like that. It was quite hesitant. Both teams had chances. LAFC had a couple disallowed goals that were quite narrow, marginal offsides that kind of could have swung the game. And Espérance also had some brilliant chances, particularly in that first half. I think of that really early on chance for Belaïli when he's literally 6 yards out and kind of manages to shoot within the proximity of Hugo Lloris, who had an excellent game, actually. As did Ben Said, and we'll get into that. But Espérance, for me, were the slightly better team. Not because they were any more creative or they had better attacking patterns, but because they were slightly better defensively organized, and because of one man, and that man is Youcef Belaïli. And this game was all about him, which, again, for me, I tweeted that this game sums up a player probably better than any other game I've seen summing up a player, his performance, because Belaïli is this maverick. He's a maestro. He carries the ball so beautifully. He's an amazing dribbler. He's got a delightful right foot. Always wants to cut in, do things. And we saw that, flashes of that in the Flamengo game where he was kind of taking on too much responsibility, I think, in the attack, not relying on his teammates, not relying on, others in his play. And sometimes he created magic, sometimes he didn't. In this game, he did the same thing, but this time he created magic. He scored the goal, which, actually he wasn't the one who created it, but he finished it off, nutmegging Hugo Lloris in lovely fashion. But he was at the heart of everything. He earned Espérance penalty, which was then overturned, and he was given a booking for diving, which, again, for me, totally sums up the player. He was constantly a creative threat. He was everything went through him, and this was really all about him. And then, after he scored, he had a one-on-one where he rounded Lloris. Again, Lloris did really, really well, but Belaïli could have squared it earlier. He didn't. Then I think it was Ganucci's shot was cleared off the line by Hollingsworth. He just was magic, but he also made mistakes, and mainly I'm talking about getting booked, because him getting booked, he will miss the last game because he got booked in the first game against Flamengo as well. He will miss the all-important game against Chelsea. So for me, again, it perfectly sums up Belaïli, where he's this unbelievable talent, unbelievable, in that 2019 AFCON, it's kind of a lot of it goes down as Mahrez's AFCON, but he was the better player for a lot of us, myself included, at that AFCON, and he's so good. But then he makes really bad decisions at times, and he doesn't work as hard as he should. That caught them out against Flamengo, as he was defensively caught out because he didn't track his man often, and Varela was the right back who ghosted down the right and created that goal for Flamengo. And in this game, the real mistake was the diving, and then his poor decision making when he had a couple chances to slide in other players. But having said that, he was brilliant. He got Espérance the win. They really should have won by more, and it's a shame because Esperance, the only way that they could go into that game against Chelsea, knowing that a draw would be enough, realistically, was for them to score 3 goals, ideally score and win 3-0. There's some technicalities and other things, but essentially they needed to win 3-0, and they could have. They had so many chances. Jan Sass had 2 or 3 in particular. I think they had the goal shot cleared off the line. Lloris made some terrific saves. But Esperance were also caught kind of napping at the back a couple times. They got off the let off the hook a few times, particularly for the offsides goal. But I think what I want to also talk about the kind of real moment of the flashpoint, which was that penalty. Completely kind of innocuous foul that, yes, it was a foul, but it was so frustrating. And it felt like this was going to be the exact same as the Al Ahly game, where Esperance are the better team. They dominate, they play better football, and somehow they're not going to win. But Dennis Bouanga, for me, one of the best players in the MLS. I think he top goal scorer last season, or one of them, has been in fire form. I think 9 goals and 9 or something like that. Scored the goal that obviously qualified LAFC to the Club World Cup. He steps up to take the penalty, and Ben Said saves it with his dangling foot in the middle of the goal. Brilliant save. And that, for me, summed it up. And again, like I said, it didn't actually matter for Esperance. Draw or a 1-0 win doesn't make a difference for them. They have to beat Chelsea. That's all that matters now. But the amount of energy that gives them coming into this, winning that game, winning at the Club World Cup, it's such a monkey off your shoulder. It gives them so much confidence. And we saw, even without Belaïli, Jan Sass had a couple really good chances. Ganucci had that chance. They do have other things. Yes, not that much. And, the others are really going to have to step up. Tactically, they got this game right. In the first game, I remember tweeting that Abderrahman Konate should have started, and he didn't. And that really hurt them against Flamengo. And we saw that, Belaïli on that left side got caught napping, and that's what caused Flamengo to score. And Konate came on in the second half, to his credit, was a real good player, improved the team. He's a really, really exciting 18-year-old attacking kind of box-to-box midfielder. All energy, all action, but really is an attacking midfielder. He's not a silky attacking midfielder. He is a runner. But in this tournament, he's kind of been shuttled out onto the left to kind of essentially be a working left winger, in the Samuel Eto'o for Jose Mourinho mold. He's there to do Belaïli's defensive work, and he did that again today. I think he was terrific, both in the first game and in this game. But also, I really want to point out that his inclusion meant that their midfield 3, I know he kind of played out on the left and it was more like a 4-4-2, but their midfield 3 of Konate, Onuchi Ogbelu, and Khalil Ganucci. Ganucci and Ogbelu are both 22, and Abderrahman Konate is 18. That is the youngest midfield at this tournament. That is incredible. Ogbelu, just a couple years ago, was playing in Nigeria. Abderrahman Konate last season was playing for San Pedro in the interior of Nigeria, Côte d'Ivoire. I've been to San Pedro. It's not a footballing hub. For those two to make that move to Tunis and step up in the way they have this season continually, in the Champions League, in the Tunisian League. Ogbelu scored the winner in the Tunisian Cup just a couple weeks ago, is incredible. And so for me, that, as much as this was about Belaïli, and it was about Belaïli, let's not take that away from him, for me, so much of it is about that midfield 3, because they put in so much work. And that's how they beat LAFC for me. I think LAFC didn't offer much, I'll be honest, but it was won in that midfield battle, particularly Ogbelu. He was excellent. We saw him at his ball-winning best. Like, the chance that Belaïli had early on was from Ogbelu doing a turnover. They had a couple more chances where he got high turnovers, where he pressed really quickly. And for me, that's where they beat LAFC. They were physically dominant in the midfield. Now, they don't quite have the kind of techie ball player who can play through those passes into Rodriguez or Mokoena or Belaïli or Jan Sass or whoever's up front. They don't have that. Ganucci is kind of meant to be that, and maybe he will be, but this is a huge step up and responsibility on him. So that it's a huge result for Espérance. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place. I'm literally recording this straight after the game, so it's a lot of hype. But huge result for Espérance. Going into the Chelsea game, it's a huge ask. And they have to win. And I think that's the difficult part, because Chelsea know if they get a draw, they will go through. Now, having said that, there's a huge amount of pressure on Chelsea. I was at that Flamengo game earlier today. Magnificent, phenomenal, particularly from the Flamengo fans. They were incredible. But it was really embarrassing for Chelsea, the way that they took the lead, were dominated despite taking the lead. Their goal was really, really fortunate. They get the sending off from Nicholas Jackson, and then they get hammered towards the end of the game. And Flamengo just controlled them. They were so much better than them, even before the goal. Particularly like Jorginho, Eric Pulgar. Jorginho, a former Chelsea player, coming and dominating that midfield. So even though Chelsea know a draw is enough, emotionally for them a draw won't be enough. They will have to push for the winner, just because of this kind of emotional stakes because the idea that they could come out of this group having drawn with Espérance and lost to Flamengo would be embarrassing, to be honest. It's sad to say, but that's kind of what we're talking about. So for me, Espérance, they have to hang in the game. I think it's going to be like how Botafogo beat PSG. They're not going to outplay Chelsea. They're not going to beat them on quality. What they're going to beat them on is hard work, effort, defensive structure, which was a little better this game. It wasn't great against Flamengo. And I think the fans are going to be up for it. Espérance's fans, now, I might get flack for this. Wydad, El Ahly, some of the best fans in Africa. Espérance's fans at this tournament have been a class above. They have been phenomenal. Both in terms of the numbers, they outnumbered the Wydad fans, which is incredible when you think about the amount of Moroccans versus Tunisians that are in this country. And you saw it again in this game. LAFC, the American team at this, I know they only qualified quite late in this tournament, but they are the home team, quote unquote, at this tournament, and they were comfortably outnumbered by the Espérance fans. So I think they go into that Chelsea game, they shut up shop, they get the fans on their side, they make Chelsea nervous. And look, this Chelsea side is supremely talented, but they're inexperienced. We've shown that they can collapse both in the Premier League and now in the Club World Cup. At Flamengo have drawn the blood from them, so we know that they're not infallible. You just drag this game out as long as you can, and then you're hoping for a set piece. For me, Jan Sass is the one that has to step up. He showed flashes today that kind of when he had that brilliant chance, he shimmied, beat two players. He's done that a couple times in this game. First game, he was rubbish. This game, he was a lot better. He didn't quite have the finish on him, which was very disappointing, but he was a lot better. So for me, he's the one that they kind of have to hang their hat on. But, it could be others. Elias Mokwena could step up. I really want to see Ashraf Jabri start. I know Rodrigo Rodriguez started these first two games, but I wouldn't mind seeing Jabri start from the front. Either way, if Espérance go out, they can go out with their heads held high given the season that they've had. It's been a brilliant performance from them today. And I think, they've got nothing to lose against Chelsea. See you in the next one.